All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. And have you thought about doing a few tumblers with your new F2 that you just got? 15 watts, 15 watts can get you pretty good results on tumblers with a lot better speed than what we were used to with the original F1. So if you had thought about doing tumblers and wanted to know how to set your machine up, what tools and tricks to use, it's not a lot different from what we've went over with the F1, but there are a few things that have changed, especially with the new RA3 rotary. So there is some things we need to cover with that. But if tumblers is something you've considered doing with your F2, or if you just like watching laser videos, stick around and we're going to make some tumblers. All right, guys, so to start with, I just want to make sure everybody understands that today we're going to be using Hassel Outfitters tumblers. These I sourced from Amazon, and I know there's places you can get them cheaper, but I make up for it in the cost of the materials. I don't have to keep them on hand. These things can be at my door in 2 days. It's pretty handy. The cool thing about the Hassels are there's no logo. There's no already on their logo nowhere around this thing, so you don't have to worry about getting away from that. The materials, I've always had good luck with the coatings as well as the stainless steel. So it's what I know. I've used it. I've done hundreds of these, maybe more. And so that's what we're going to be using today. As far as settings goes, guys, I'll show you the settings I'm using, but use your own settings because sometimes one setting may not work in your area, vice versa. The temperature, climate, all those good things. Plus, you have to make decisions for your safety with your machine. I'm going to be running settings today that aren't exactly recommended by xTool, but I'm going to get the job done a lot quicker than using xTool's recommended settings. So let's get over here and look at the setup, and I'm going to talk to you a few things about the new F2 paired with the RA3, and then we're gonna get started. All right, guys, so for today's setup, I will be using my F2. I've had this little guy for a little while. I've used it on lots of different things. So far, it is performing the way that I feel it should. We're also gonna be using the RA3, which is the new interchangeable rotary device. I mean, it's kind of like a erector set of rotaries, which is pretty handy. It works really well. I've had good luck with it so far. I like the features. It does allow you to angle everything. You get these nice little magnetically attached chucks that just slide in here, lock into place. It is taller, more robust than the original RA2. And for those of you with a little nostalgia, this is my RA2 Pro with the accessories kits on it. And as you can see, footprint wise, the new one takes up a lot less space, but has basically the same functions, but it also has the ability to accept larger tumblers because the center of the machine is up off of the ground, a little higher than the original RA2, but you also get a little riser block with your kit here that will add you an extra 25 millimeters of lift. And being able to put this on there is as simple as unhooking this. Then you will take this, which has the little lineup pins in there. There is a screw here that you can turn once you get those pins in, and that will lock this into the base plate. So then when you attach this part to it, snap everything together, tighten this screw. Technically everything's together, and you've got a lot more elevation. So if you're doing big Stanleys or stuff like that with some of the other machines, you're not going to do a Stanley with this one unless you're doing a small logo, but that does give you the reach if you have another machine. Now with this RA3, it also does come with the rollers. It comes with the stand and this nice little box, and I'll show you the box as I'm putting this part back in. Sometimes if you don't get this stuff lined up just right, it can be a little stubborn. So the little storage box is pretty nifty, but once you put most of this together, you're not going to want to take it apart. So you just take, and these little parts have their assigned spaces, inside the box. It's pretty neat. This is the part for the rollers. If you wanted to use the rollers that sit in there, you also have the little suction cup on one end of that, as well as the double rollers here. You can use that for odd shaped objects or anything longer that needs some support on the other end of it. But it also, here's the rest of the parts for the rotary, as far as the rollers and some random stuff. So, and this little case, pretty cool. It's kind of foam, but it's got magnets in there that keeps it closed, and it's a nice little storage box. But me personally, I just keep mine put together, and so I probably won't be putting it back in the box. So for the application that we're going to be doing today, we need this to be just standard height for this regular tumbler. So I'm going to put this back together on its original little base here. I can get that to snap. If you don't get those pins lined up just right, they don't want to go in there. So this is the base configuration for the chuck. When I got this thing out, you know, I've been loving on this new chuck. The RA3 is definitely an upgrade from the RA2. The RA2, you had to get the accessory kit to be able to swivel it, and instead of blocking up the front and all that, this one, it fit the bill for everything I wanted to see in a chuck. So I was excited when I got up this morning and I got over here and started getting ready to do some tumblers. But then when I started, I realized there's a problem. xTool, their engineers, somebody at xTool fumbled on this deal. The way that this works with the other machines is you can take, and it works this way with this one too, you can take these little bolts here out of your L bracket, or you can use extra ones if you have them, and you can set the machine, you can set this rotary up on the work area, and you can put these screws through the rotary into the work bed. And if you look, there's little lines on here that where you're supposed to have the chuck. It's lined up perfectly. Everything is great. You put both of these things in, man, this thing is rock solid. Like you can put both of these little thumb screws here in the bed. And now if you try to pick up the chuck, the machine's going with it, or vice versa. This is a solid base, and I was excited. I was like, man, finally they got it. Finally, xTool has got it together with putting this stuff together. Until I put a tumbler in there, and what I realized, guys, is once I put, and I'll take this little chuck here out, which I love this part. This was awesome. All right, I put a tumbler in here. I got it chucked in, got it ready to go. And what I found out, guys, is like this. And I'll raise this all the way up. You have to focus on the tumbler. And this is where I knew we had a problem. That's as high as it will go. It will not go any further. And guys, there's my 2 dots. So I am well below focused. So what that means is I can't focus on this tumbler with this setup. That was a major letdown because this is a solid setup. This is not going to work because we can't focus. So I had to come up with a solution. All right, and just so we're clear, guys, I went back and looked at the owner's manual or the user's manual for this machine to try to figure out exactly how xTool expected this to be used. And in the manual, the pages that I found, it only showed the rollers being used from the RA3. It did not show the chuck. So I'm guessing somebody there figured out that this was a problem. But I don't know if they just decided to go on with it, found the problem too late, what the deal was. But anyway, some folks online, I've seen some folks saying that the way to do it is to take this, and then you got to take this little plate like the old one. You got to sit this on here, and then you put the plate back there behind it so that the machine can kind of rest on it. And then you got to real carefully try to line up the machine with these little lines with the tumbler. And you got to run it just like that. And if you mess around in setting it up and you bump this or bump that, and I mean, it moves around. So now, good news is you can actually focus it now, and you actually have to come down a little bit to focus it. So this was a problem that we had to fix. So I sat down, I got my measuring tape, I put my thinking hat on, and so just like I normally do, I came up with a solution to finish this machine and make it consistent and let it be able to live up to what it is actually capable of. So, without any further ado, I present to you guys the Bigfoot F2 RA3 adapter. And I'm calling it Bigfoot because it's basically just a Bigfoot for the F2. And the way that the Bigfoot works is we're going to take the tumbler loose from the chuck. All right, I've got the RA3 right here. So we're going to take the RA3, get it over here to the side. This plate, it doesn't matter. You don't need this thing. That's a terrible idea of using it as like a rocker. So with the Bigfoot, all you got to do is you can take your RA3 and you can push it in this way. And then you can sit it down and sit your RA3, your F2 on top of it. Or you can just use the handle provided, lift up the F2, sit it down in the little slot right there provided in the Bigfoot. And then you just take your RA3, and I've made it to where there's 3 layers on mine, and so this works really well. You just take the end of it and you shove it underneath the machine. There's a slot in there all the way to the other side, and when you get it all the way across, it drops down on this side. And so now it's in there where it can't go anywhere. And if you just like the cosmetics of it, you can put this back in there. So with the Bigfoot, now the chuck is set up underneath the machine. So this is going to give you almost a 1/2 inch of additional Z-axis travel. Now, if you need more than that, when you're building your Bigfoot, all you got to do is add another middle layer, because the middle layer allows for the chuck to be sitting on the table still, but you can go higher with it, because like if I raise this up now, I can just pull the chuck out, and so I can leave the Bigfoot adapter on there and run my machine. One thing that I did too with the machine is I built in a little tray that holds this little guy right here. It holds that, and if you have your little measuring apparatus right here, it also has this tray that will hold that for you too. So you got both of those right here in the little cubby on the Bigfoot, and you can run your machine just like this. And then when you get ready to use the RA3, you just slide it in the slot underneath, let it drop into the little pocket where it's supposed to sit, and then plug it up and you're ready to go. So I'm going to plug the RA3 in. Now that we've got it plugged in, all I've got to do is take my tumbler and put it on there and go to work. So all of that to say, now this thing's bad. All right, this thing is bad. So now that we got that little problem out of the way, let's engrave a tumbler. All right, so before we get started, guys, I want to show you, if you haven't seen this thing, how these work. All of this is put together with magnets. So all of these little pins and stuff like that, they're just magnetic. So you can use this several different ways. You can pull those pins out from there up, and drop them down in your CNC bed. You can pull those pins out from there, and so you could, assuming that your cup would hold, you could take this and you could actually use it like this by inserting, if I can do it one-handed, let me set this up. So you could sit this in the tumbler as shown and hold it that way if you wanted to. Like there's enough of a grip there that you could do it that way, or you could do it as I have this one. You can use the little rubber feet and grip the outside, or you could even grip the inside. Because of that little lip right there, I'm choosing to do the outside. I did have one slip earlier, and so I started holding them on the outside with this taper the way that it is. So, but there's a couple of different options. Like I said, these little things here, you can put the pins in there and do the same thing with the pins in these holes. There's so many different configurations with this chuck head that's pretty awesome. I like the way they did that. So hats off to that. I'm going to forgive you guys for this because, you know, if y'all didn't screw up and do something like this occasionally, how would I sell my jigs and stuff? So, by the way, guys, the Bigfoot adapter will be on the Clack Shack Etsy shop. So, yeah, it just sits right in there. Machine sits in it nicely. I did cut this thing with the 70-watt atom stack, so it's kind of a heavy kerf machine. So if you get yours, you may need to, you know, reduce the kerf, or depending on what machine you use, you may actually have to add some kerf to it with yours. So I would suggest just cutting the top plate first to see how it fits with the machine. Make sure it's not too snug or too loose, and then adjust your kerf based off of that. So, but yeah, there it is. It's working really well so far. So let's get this show on the road, guys. All right. So with this machine, as you know, XCS, xTool Creative Space, xTool Studio, as they like to call it now, it does have some presets in there. Now, I have found that their presets are very conservative. Like they're running 50% power, and these engraves are taking a really long time. I've saw other people with different settings that I don't necessarily want to use for my application. You, however, may choose to use the xTool preset settings, which did work. Or you can be adventurous like me, try to get done a little faster. Instead of doing a 15 to 20 minute tumbler, do it more like a 5 to 10 minute tumbler. And that's what we're going to be doing. So instead of the 45% power, which I suspect xTool is using to avoid the visible flame that's going to come off of the tumbler, I suspect that's why they're doing that. But instead of doing that, we're going to go with the settings that I have determined to be the best through testing. And I always recommend that you guys do testing. Now, I'll give you the settings I'm using, but like I said, if you use my settings, that's your decision. Do your own research, do your own homework, and do your own testing. So with this Hassel Outfitter red tumbler right here, the power settings, if you look all the way up to 400 speed, I'm getting some really good clarity and nice appearance. So I think that's where I want to land. I don't want to go 100% power, but I do kind of like the way the 90, right around 90, between those two right there, kind of like the shininess and the clarity of those two. So that's where we're going to be setting the settings. I will be using, like I said, these chucks are pretty nice. The one thing that I'm going to brag on xTool about, since I've kind of got on to them about this other thing, is the way that this thing has these interchangeable magnetic chucks is pretty handy, because as you're doing them, you can have the next one prepped if you've got multiple pieces to be used. So you can take this one, pop it in there, do the engrave, and while you're waiting, you can have this one going. It's just a lot faster because you have this ability. And using my little setup here to where you don't have to worry about the chuck moving, it makes it that much faster. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to set this over in the machine. We've got it on there. I've measured everything that I need to measure, which for those of you that aren't familiar, this cup does have a little bit of a taper. And so on the RA3, the knob on the side, you're going to need to make sure that you level the tumbler. It doesn't have to be perfect with the blue diode like this. They're very forgiving on focus, but you want as close as you can get it, because you can get it far enough out of focus that you'll have a little bit of a variation. So we're going to use that, and all you've got to do when you put it on there is you're going to slide it in, make sure that the pin locks in, and then with this little level, just set it up on top of the tumbler, and just like a regular bubble level, make sure that it's in the center. And of course, we've already centered it, so it is. You'll loosen this little nut right here, get it to where it's level with the other hand, and tighten it back down. Once you've done that, you can put that back in the cubby if you have a Bigfoot for your machine. As far as the measurements goes, the software is going to ask you for a measurement. You're going to have two options. You're going to have basically the diameter, radius, or the perimeter, circumference of the tumbler. Now, in the case of this one it varies. The bottom is smaller than the top. There's no right answer for this unless you're going to break your design into several segments and try to piece it all back together, blah, blah, blah. Just go to the middle. Just wherever the center of this thing is, me personally, I like to go by the averages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in the middle of the tumbler, because everything else is kind of going to go either the rotation is going to be a little slower or a little faster. So if you go to the center and do your measurement there, the way you're going to do it is just wrap it around, pull it as tight as you can get it without breaking it. Just pull it tight and get your measurement right there. And so I've already done that. I know what the measurement is, so I've kind of cheated, but I just wanted to show you guys that step is critical when you start setting this up. So let's move over to xTool Studio, and well, first we're going to put our measuring tool back in the caddy on the Bigfoot. Now, let's go over to xTool and set this job up and get this thing moving. All right, so here we are, guys. xTool Studio, formerly known as XCS. We're going to be knocking this little project out. You can see I've been playing around. I've already got the file set up, just doing some testing. But we're going to redo it and make another tumbler just for you guys' sake, to make sure that you see the process from start to stop. So we're going to go over here to New Project. All right. When it opens up this new window right here, whenever it decides to open it up, it's automatically connected. It's found our xTool F2 and is automatically connected to it. You'll notice that by the beep from the machine, as well as the little green light right there that says ready on the xTool F2. Now, for this job, we are not going to be concentrating on base plate engraving. So we're going to click that, and we're going to change it to chuck, because we've already got the chuck set up, ready to go. And that's going to change our setting. Now, I will tell you this. When you hit the autofocus button, you are not going to want to allow this thing to use. You can see here where it says RA2 and RA3 manual mode. You have to manually put all of the stuff in there. It's not automatic, and I will tell you, I have discovered that if you do use any of this manual settings, it's going to mess your focus up. So we're going to manually focus it using those two dots before we send the job. So we're not worried about that right now. We can take a picture, which we're really not worried about the picture either. So with this particular tumbler, you have two options, diameter or perimeter. Since we use a little tape that comes with the machine, we're going to go with perimeter. And right there, we're going to put in 265. Now, like I said, on the small end, it is less, and on the big end, it is more. But we measured in the middle because law of averages, okay? We're just going to go with the average. The material, there are lots of different materials you can put in here. They've got their 20-ounce tumbler. We'll put that in there just so you guys can see what happens. All right. If you notice when I put that in there, it changed to 292.17. Yeah, I didn't know that it would automatically change the diameter if you selected one of their tumblers, and it cost me a tumbler because it changed my measurement. So if you start messing around with any of their settings for tumblers, be sure to reset your circumference or your perimeter or whatever you want to call it, because it will change it based on the ones that they sell. So if you're going to use that as a go-by, just know you're going to need to go back in and make sure you change that to the correct setting. All right, so with our tumbler, and I don't like this zoom level, so we're going to fit to height. And I'm going to move my screen over a little bit, that way I can see everything. So before we started all of this, we measured our tumbler, and it's 265 millimeters is the size of our tumbler. So I'm going to go in here, and this is personal preference, but this is the way Clack likes to do it. If you feel like this is a good way, go ahead. If you don't, then that's fine too. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and I'm going to draw me a little rectangle, and I'm going to put it as 265 millimeters. What we have done is I have created a box that is basically as if you peeled the label off of this tumbler. The perimeter around this thing is 265 millimeters. This box is 265 millimeters. So as long as my graphics stay in this box, it's not going to overlap itself. That's the whole object here. If you wanted to do two logos, then you could divide this by, in half and create yourself two, lines to use, tool lines to use to do two logos, whatever the case may be. But I also know from measuring the tumbler that from top to bottom, I've got 140 millimeters worth of usable space. But if you look, due to the work area restrictions of the F2, we'll have 115 millimeters of usable work area that we can go with. So based on our specific tumbler, this is our work area, okay? Because we can't go any wider than the machine will allow us. And if we wrote all the way around our tumbler, it would only be 265 millimeters. So I've got this little box built. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to not output, because I just want this as a tool line. This is just a reference for me to use during my design process, so that I don't have to worry about messing up a tumbler. So I know if anything goes past this line right here, it's going to wrap all the way around the tumbler. So now I'm going to bring in some artwork, and I've got some artwork. What I'm doing with these is my daughter, of course, many of you may know, she's in the band, and so I figure if I'm going to make some red tumblers, I'm going to make them to where they kind of match the band theme, so she can give them as gifts or whatever. And as you can see, this is actually a Lightburn export file, and it is really close to the correct size already. It's at 267. So what I need to do is I need to change that file size to 265 to match our box that we made. And I'm just going to align it in the center, because with this, like I said, we can't get all the way to the edges. I don't want to get all the way to the edges. I just kind of want that centered. All right, so now I'm going to bring in some more graphics. This is going to be the school logo for the school. I'm going to bring those in, and I want to put them where I can. I want to put like one right here, and then we will copy that one, and we'll put another one like right here in this little low spot. So just to give us, like I said, a little school representation, and then the musical notes to represent the band. I feel like it's a decent design. We'll see how it looks when we get done. I've done a couple of these on other machines, and they look pretty good when I get done with them. We're not going to be putting a name or anything on this one. That way we can gift it to the teacher or whoever we want to gift it to. We can always come back later and customize it with a name. That's another thing. If you have a machine that's not necessarily a speed demon at doing tumblers, and you have a design like this that you're going to be selling to, say, a school or band booster club, or you know, the athletic association is doing a fundraiser, or whatever the case may be, if you have these tumblers, you can go ahead and make the tumblers and just leave a space for the name. And then once you get the order, you can come back and add the name to it if you know how to go about doing this, and you know how to set this up. This little line right here is in the center of the tumbler, and I know it doesn't look like it because we haven't focused the machine yet, but this little line is going to be in the center of the tumbler, right where the red and blue dots are, and it's going to wrap this way. So it's pretty easy once you figure out how this works to set everything up. Now, these are the settings that xTool had listed for their red tumbler. You'll see they're running 45% power and speed of 100 millimeters per second. So me personally, not what we're going to be using. We're going to be using the CLACKSTER settings for a Hassel Outfitter red tumbler, which is going to be 90% power at 400 millimeters a second. So let's back up that second. Okay, so let's see if I hit process. I think it'll give me an estimation here. Okay, using xTool settings for this design. See if it's going to give me an estimation. It's taking its sweet time. 40 minutes to do this tumbler using the factory xTool settings. All right, so, and let's change this back to the Clack selected settings. And then we're going to go to process and get the same, it's the same file. All I changed is the settings. And these are estimates, but it'll give you an idea of what a difference it makes when you do the testing, come up with your own settings. Like I said, 14 minutes. So we went from 40 minutes using xTool recommended to 14 minutes and 50 seconds using mine. It's about, well, say 15 seconds, 15 minutes. So now I will tell you, we're going to have a little bit of a flame lick coming off of it, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. We're professionals. So sending it over to the machine, and we'll go over there and complete this mission there. All right, so we're off to the races, guys. And you'll notice on there, I do have that little bit of flame kind of licking up from the engrave. because we're running 100% power, but it's well away from the glass. There's nothing near it combustible, and so it's not a concern for me. I would rather have the extra, what was it, 25 minutes that we're saving on this tumbler. I would rather have that than to worry about the little flame. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be watching the machine, making sure that it does what it's supposed to, and hopefully in about 15 more minutes or about 14 more minutes, we'll have a tumbler to look at. So let's switch over to the little time lapse there and get it done. All right, guys, so we got a few more minutes left on the tumbler. I've got it running. I'm gonna have you some nice little fast forward video footage over here as well. But I wanna touch on cleaning the tumblers after you engrave them. When you, don't panic when you see the tumbler come off of the machine if it doesn't look the way that you want it to. Hopefully you've done testing and you know that your settings are correct and you know that everything was set properly, but you're gonna need a few things to clean it up. Now there's some different ways that you can go about this, so feel free to look at other folks' techniques. Me personally, I use rubbing alcohol, magic eraser, and a microcloth, or just a piece of t-shirt. It doesn't have to be a microfiber. But be careful with the magic erasers. Don't bear down too hard because you can cause like a dull look to the powder coating on the tumbler if you rub too hard. You just want to kind of give it a little bit of a rub. Hopefully between the rubbing alcohol and the microfiber, you'll get most of it that way. But I still give them a nice little once over with the magic eraser. So we should be getting done here in just a few minutes. I don't know how well you can see the flame, but I'll try to put the fast forward video over the top of this while we talk about it for a second. But you can see that little bit of flame. As long as that flame's no longer than, you know, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, especially with tumblers, I'm not concerned because there's nothing there really that can burn. The only thing that you would want to be careful with is just make sure that if it's engraving, it shouldn't with this machine, but make sure you're not getting too close to the protective cover. And if you are, then, you know, raise it up out of the way. I will say also ventilation with this setup, with the door open like that, this is no longer an enclosed machine per se. It's partially enclosed. At this point, the shield is merely just a shield from certain angles. And it's also going to cause a little bit of a problem when it comes to collecting all of the fumes and stuff off of the engrave. I'm using the desktop air purifier from xTool, and it's doing okay, but I can still tell that the odor is in the shop. So you may want to like open a window or something like that when you're doing tumblers, unless you have, you know, another enclosure that you can put it in, or maybe a more powerful ventilation system. But using the little xTool desktop air purifier, it's doing a pretty good job. I have low expectations for these little small cartridge units like that, but in a pinch or in certain situations for, you know, like events and stuff like that, they do a good job. But I've been running this one quite a bit, and I think I've put a hurting on the cartridges inside it. I probably need to clean the pre-filter just a little bit. But it looks like we're getting really close to being done, but we'll check back whenever it's done here in just a second and get this thing on the road. All right, guys, so there it went. Now, this is one of the things that I do like about this apparatus. And I'm just going to kind of simulate changing the tumbler. We're not actually going to do another tumbler, but I'm going to simulate what it would be like, just so you guys can see the reason that I do think that this is a step in the right direction, despite this minor oversight on the whole mounting thing. So here we go. Sorry, so this one's done. So I'm just going to pull that guy out, set it over here to the side, grab the other tumbler, slide it in, make sure that it locks all the way against the little chuck part. Rotate that, sit there, check my cover, and now if this were actually my next tumbler, all I got to do is double tap this button right here on this controller. Or if you guys are interested, and I'll put links down below, if you don't have the orange controller or the green controller from the Ultra series, this is handy. This is a little button. This is the one that was made for the original F1. It works with other machines as well. It's got this little adapter, but this thing is handy, and you can just like punch it twice. It's basically just a single keyboard button, and you can punch it twice and it'll run the job over and over. This is really good when you're batching things out. If you're sitting at a table and maybe you used to sew a lot and you like the idea of a pedal, they also offer this pedal that does the same thing. It's a little harder to double click that, but me personally, I like the button or either this little touchpad thing here. So there we have it. That's how you batch them out. And with this setup, with the way I've got it, with the Bigfoot, I don't want to worry about anything moving. And then once I get through doing my tumblers, let me get my little camera here down. So once I do get through doing my tumblers, all I've got to do is unplug the rotary, slide it out, and go put this part up. And then next time we decide we want to do tumblers again with the Bigfoot already on there, because it's not in the way, just slide the tumbler, the rotary back in there and plug it up. You could even just leave it plugged up, leave it sitting there. It's out of the way once you pull the chuck out, so technically you could just leave it like that. So there you go, guys. Let me know what you think about it. I mean, I feel like this is a pretty awesome design. I've seen other folks, you know, setting it on there and trying to get it lined up. And when they did that with the original F1, I didn't like the idea then. But for those of you that remember back when the RA2 Pro, they had a similar issue. And so I created this little jig here. And what happened was the RA2 Pro would sit down in this little slot here, and it worked. Very similar to this design, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I like this design better than I do my old one for the RA2 Pro. This one worked, but the new design with the Bigfoot, to me, it's just a lot more convenient, a lot better, and has that cool little tray right there as well. So let's jump out here and wrap this up. All right, so now that we've got our tumbler off of the machine, like I said, with this, it's easy enough to just hold it, twist, and that pops right off. These are really nice, and so I could technically, while the other one's engraving, be getting the next one ready and just repeat and rinse. Now, you'll notice coming off of the laser, it looks a little sad. You're like, oh my gosh, I've messed up my tumbler. But that's not the case, guys. A little rubbing alcohol. Like I said, this is my old tried and true routine. There are others. I'm not criticizing anybody that does it differently. This is my approach, and everybody has their own way of doing things. And this has made me a lot of money doing it this way, using the S1, which was the S1 was my tumbler go-to machine. The thing with tumblers, guys, in a perfect world, you would want to use a CO2 to do tumblers. CO2s do a much better job with tumblers without having to worry about changing the power and speed based on the color of the tumbler. CO2s are much better at doing tumblers. But let's face it, not everybody's got the budget for a CO2. Not everybody has the room for a CO2. But if you have room for this little guy, you can still do tumblers. And you can do really nice tumblers. You're not going to do them really fast. The last job that we did, this tumbler here took 17 minutes. That's not terrible, but it's not fast either. But like I said, we could make these blanks and then we can put them up, and then when somebody orders one, we can personalize it and get it out the door. So there's a couple of different ways you could go about doing it. But this is something, this little setup, literally you could put in a backpack. You could take a laptop, this machine right here with this chuck, and you could do tumblers. So whereas it's not as fast as the bigger machines, it's a lot more compact, a lot more transportable, that type of thing. But look at this, guys. Look at that right there. That's a good looking tumbler. So we got our engrave on there, all the way around the tumbler. It's completely wrapped around, and right there is our seam. That's where the two parts come together. That is exactly the way it looked in the preview. It turned out really nice. The logo's nice and frosted and burned. And to me, that is a good looking tumbler. So mission accomplished, guys. We got it done. Even though we had that little hiccup with the whole mounting of the RA3, we got it to work out. So one more time, I want to remind you guys, it's not there yet, but in the next couple of days, the Bigfoot, the Clack Shack Bigfoot RA3 adapter will be in my Etsy shop, available for purchase as far as the file goes. Now, I know somebody are going to ask me, what about if we don't have a laser to make it? Could you make it and then ship it to us? Maybe. If enough people are interested, if you can't cut it yourself because you don't have a bigger machine, drop a comment down below, email me, let me know. If there's enough demand, this may be my first physical product that I offer in my Etsy shop. But if nothing else, I will have the file in there available for download as soon as I can get it processed. But my priority is to get this video out there so you guys can understand and know what this machine is capable of doing. And if you do decide that, you know what, I didn't want the machine, but after seeing this, I think I want it, then by all means, guys, use those affiliate links down below. I don't beat you guys up with the affiliate links, but I do really appreciate it when you use them. So yeah, there you go. And it just looks so sleek sitting there, all buttoned up, ready for the next tumblers. Look at that, guys. Look at that right there. All right, so hope you enjoyed it, guys. Don't forget, on your way out, hit the thumbs up, subscribe for more content if you like what you see here. Also, don't forget, guys, every Sunday night, me and Steve over at Vintage's Workshop, which, by the way, if you haven't subscribed, go check him out. We do a live show on Sunday nights. We answer questions, and you guys bring the content. You ask the questions, we give you the answers, or the best we can come up with, based on my experience as well as Steve's. And we have a bunch of other guys and gals that are members of our community that hang out in the chat that a lot of times are just as knowledgeable, if not more so, than Steve and I about the questions that you guys have. So it's a really good resource to get to understand how your laser works, keep up with the latest news about lasers and CNCs and 3D printing, and just hang out with like-minded people. So if that's something you're into, be sure to mark your calendar, 7 p.m. Central, Sunday Night Live. And if you have any trouble finding it, just go to mine or Steve's channel, go to the live section, and you should see it in our upcoming lives, and set your clock. But until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.